Before we start, ladies and gentlemen, with the speeches, there is a very special AV that we'd like to share with you of a true visionary. Here it goes. I now invite Mr. Anand Sharma, Deputy Leader of Opposition Rajya Sabha, to give the valedictory address.
Sunil Manjal, Jayant Sinha, distinguished participants, friends. Like the previous years, I am very happy to be here, and particularly this year, when we don't have the presence of late Brajmohan Manjal ji, who is truly an inspiring leader, an elder, and a person who had a very sound understanding of this country and its people. I would like to compliment you for choosing this subject, which is very important. Perhaps the idea of India in the last century has been defined and redefined, but eventually distilled after an epic struggle, the Indian national movement, a struggle for India's freedom, led by Gandhi, the father of our nation, who had the power not only to inspire, but also to give their strength to hundreds of millions of Indians who were subjugated under the colonial rule, who had no voice, they were poor, backward. Most of India did not have access to education, literacy, means of livelihood. And there was a general feeling, particularly amongst the colonizers, that this country cannot stand up and challenge the might of the empire. But India did stand up and eventually vanquished the empire. And it was India's freedom which triggered a chain across the globe, Asia, Africa, Latin America, the nations which were humiliated, where people had no voice to determine their destiny or future, were liberated. And leading the charge across the world was India's first Prime Minister and a great statesman, a great scholar, and a great leader. And without any doubt, the architect of modern India, Jawaharlal Nehru. Now, this is our history in recent times, that how the idea of India evolved. It's not a question that has not been discussed But the idea of India, as I use the word distilled, that was done by Gandhi, Nehru, Tagore, Aurobindo, and Subhash Chandra Bose. Many of us perhaps have not visited those pages of our history and the words of these learned, great sons of India, who actually explained what this country is. And even the idea remained after the painful partition of this country and the forced migration of a large number of people, perhaps the biggest in human history. So my idea of India, in which I was born 6 years after India's independence, is of a India which has all languages, religions, people of different ethnic origins, living together in respect, in acceptance, despite the traumatic history, accepting each other. My idea of India is not one of tolerance, because tolerance I've always found disrespectful. This means you are tolerating the other, tolerating your fellow countrymen, the sons and daughters of the same land. Historically, we have been the original melting pot of civilizations and culture. We have shown to the world the wisdom of our phobias. Many of us have said it, but perhaps it's apt in present context to repeat it. And I would like to refer to the age-old saying, I am nijo paroveti, that this is mine and that is yours. Garana laguchet sang. That's the thinking of petty minds, small minds. Udar chiretana, vasudhaiva kutumbakam. That those who are large-hearted, those who are wise, for them the Vasudha, the entire universe, is a family. That is what we inherited, the wisdom. We inherited also an independent India put together after great struggle and enormous sacrifices. Therefore, it becomes our duty to ensure that we secure, we protect, we nurture what we were bequeathed. And we do not allow any thought, expression, individuals, political organizations, irrespective of who they are, to destroy this idea of India. We are multilingual, multi-religious, multicultural, multi-ethnic. The richness of India's diversity is like a mosaic, the tapestry, the different threads, or a beautiful garden. If you make it of one color, if you have a diktat, an environment, or a mindset that it should only be white flowers, or pink, or yellow, or orange, would you call it a beautiful garden? Or where you have all colors, all flowers for you to see and to enjoy. Now that is the challenge today before India, which India must resist. Our strength has been of charcha and chintan, to discuss, to reflect, to debate, to dissent. Today what I find disturbing, in the largest democracy, dissent is being frowned upon. Unification of the country, which has taken place long back, after the princely states merged, and that's a part of history, is being confused and distorted with uniformity. From Aurobindo to Tagore, they had rejected that. And I have a word of caution, particularly with regard to the younger people. There are very few here, but some of you are here. That when we send our sons and daughters to schools and to universities, like all of us have been, We were young, rebellious, idealistic, questioning, not listening sometimes to our teachers or to parents. The universities of India, like universities elsewhere, have been sanctuaries where freedom of thought and expression is there. And that's why the same people, when they come out, it's surprising to find, and I know of some of my friends, without naming them or embarrassing them, who were too much on the left when I was one of the activists or leaders of the campus, or somebody on the other side. And I found them very sane. I met one gentleman after about 25, 30 years, and the person had become a High Court judge, later moved on to Supreme Court. And I said to myself, the same guy whom we had to sober down because of the views. Now that is what the freedom was given to us. It was not a free India, not a geographical territory. The freedom of India was committed to us by none other than Jawaharlal Nehru at the Lahore Congress on 29th of December 1929. The freedom of India was committed to the people of India when India took the Pledge of Independence on 26th of January 1930. I have read not too much, little bit, but I've never read more moving, powerful a document than the Pledge of Independence that was taken, and I would recommend all of you to read it, so that there is a clear connect with what is our idea of India and what was agitating the minds of those who fought for your and my freedom. It's equally important, therefore, for us to remember that yes, today one can say and take it for granted that we are a constitutional democracy with universal suffrage, with the right to vote. This didn't come easily. Many nations who were independent before us didn't give the right to vote or the universal suffrage to all their adult citizens. European countries, many of them, did not give the right to vote to women up to 1971. Even the most powerful country in the world did not give right to all its citizens until 1963, the big civil rights movement. But this is what Gandhi and Nehru and Patel and Maulana gave to us, and the Indian National Congress from 1952, when the Constitution was after the adoption, the first election, everybody had equal right, whether it was a poor peasant or whether it was a billionaire. That is the greatness of our democracy. You know, Jayant, we had recently the discussion in Parliament on the adoption of the Constitution. I don't know how many of us have actually read the illuminating debates or discussions of the Constituent Assembly. The fact that on 13th of December 1946, Jawaharlal Nehru had moved the Objectives Resolution, which said that to we the people of India, and that is your preamble of the Constitution today, that we are giving to ourselves, nobody else is giving to ourselves, is the people who are sovereign to guarantee and secure freedom, political, social, and economic. We have justiciable fundamental rights, enforceable fundamental rights. We have institutions that have been built, institutions that have protected what has been guaranteed by the people to themselves as free people, the freedom of thought and expression. Equally important is to remember that we are the Republic. It's not that 26th of January is an ordinary day. There's a history behind it. And that is again connected to the struggle and to the deliberations and the resolutions and the debates. And the declaration of the first Prime Minister that independent India cannot be anything but a republic. But the meaning of that republic has to be understood. If you are committed to that, committed to the Constitution, then the idea of India is there. And that idea of India should be allowed to flower and it becomes our bounden duty, collective duty as a nation, to protect it, to defend it, and to resist any force, any thought which militates against that, so that posterity will remember us with some respect that there was a generation during this period, the second decade of the 21st century, which had the understanding and wisdom to at least respect what they were handed down by those who sacrificed. In the contemporary context, I've read your paper. You have rightly touched upon the other aspect about India's development, growth, India's economy, the opportunities that beckon our people and beckon the world. I have no doubt in my mind that we as a country have enormous potential to grow, to be competitive, and to be a global leader. At the same time, there is a word of caution that we must have the humility when we make a statement or a claim. Anything which is stated prematurely, any claim which is overstated, does not reflect us in very good light. Because people are intelligent, people understand in this country and globally. We have complex issues that are confronting us, and they cannot be wished away. Each government, since independence, had to face problems and challenges. But this is our country. Therefore, the realization of what the challenges are and how we must collectively overcome is important. And that can never be achieved, never ever, if we have an environment of confrontation, if we have partisan gridlock, if we have finger pointing, if we have regular berating and humiliation of those who have been there and have served the country to the best of their ability, then the issues which have to find a bipartisan resolution, those issues will always be there. That has been my very honest and humble opinion, which I have conveyed to my friends in the government and also to the Prime Minister. There are things which we cannot change. There are things which only the leader in a democracy can. Once we have had the elections over, everything is dusted and closed. Then what we have to do with the country starts. I hope that registers. Because India as an economy has grown, and we say here, I have no quarrel that we are the fastest growing, because it's a question of numbers. I'm not getting into the hair splitting of the new methodology, old methodology. But if you go by that, then from 6.9 to 7.2, but good. We are sustaining. There are global challenges. There have been headwinds earlier, 2008-9. There's some turbulence there is. I'll not call them global headwinds today. Irrespective of the slowdown, we are growing. But mind you, if China has dropped a bit, even at 6.5%, their growth in 5 years, they can add a substantial part of what our GDP today is. They have a trade, when it comes to decline, of only 2.5%, but a trade surplus of $595 billion US dollars. Here we have a challenge that our trades, particularly India's exports, are going down. And we must never lose sight of that fact, because we are 1.3 trillion, almost there. We have to create jobs. If for 16 months we are nosediving, and particularly in the manufacturing sector, the jobs are being lost, the FDI that is coming in, because this is not a platform I want to use for it, is not going into manufacturing. Very small percentage of that is going into manufacturing, which should be a matter of concern for us. Equally important is about the investment sentiment. India is not a country or an economy which can be built, which can accelerate its growth only on FDI. I'm a proponent, I'm a supporter of FDI. When I had the opportunity, we opened up many sectors. And I always support the initiatives when we are opening up more, creating more opportunities. Because we are part of a globalized world, which is interdependent, which is interconnected. You cannot insulate yourself. At the same time, India has to invest in itself. India must find its resources to invest. I don't know, Sunil, whether I told you, my recent concern has been that our investment rate, for the first time historically, has fallen below the national saving rate. Now, this should be a matter of concern. Your banks don't have money. You have to meet the Basel V requirements. We have paucity of resources. The flow of capital is not taking place. The services exports are again going down. So therefore, India needs to take quick decisions, particularly with what we were doing and what is hopefully being taken forward. Many of you would recall the major initiative on manufacturing that was taken through the National Manufacturing Policy. To my mind, and I say it with humility, it was perhaps the biggest policy rollout. That is where you get these numbers of 100 million jobs you get of manufacturing cities of the future, and the National Investment Manufacturing Zones, 16 of which stood notified, the 4 industrial corridors. These are the pillars of what you are seeing as a program of Make in India. So the ownership is a collective one, but the ownership is of this country. But the concern is that we are not being competitive. Whatever little share we have in manufacturing exports, we are not being competitive because of very high transaction costs. So these are all issues which this country will have to grapple with, to address and build a partnership. Partnership first within the country, within the society, and a partnership and a healthy one, not deal making, but understanding between entrepreneurs, industry, the policymakers, the industry, and the society. And lastly, if I may say, everything, irrespective of the enormity of the challenges that you and I may face, our country, nothing is insurmountable if we correctly recognize our priorities and also respect this idea of India that we all have to live together. We need to work. This is our country, and let's not allow a situation where anything else comes in the way. But if there is social disquiet, if there is unrest, if there are riots, if there is violence, then Indian industry itself will be hesitant, let alone outsiders coming and investing here. Nobody will go where there is trouble. Therefore, it's important for us to keep what we inherited, as I put my observations or statement to rest. Let's protect it, let's nurture it in the interest of this great country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite Mr. Jayant Sinha, Minister of State, Ministry of Finance, for a special address at the conclusion of the 10th edition of the Mindmine Summit. Mr. Sinha.
Shri Anand Sharma ji, Deputy Leader of the Opposition in the Rajya Sabha, Shri Sunil Munjal ji, distinguished participants in this Mindmine Summit, and members of the media.
Hello.
Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak to you on a very rich and interesting set of topics related to the idea of India, which not only has been the subject of your discussions over the last day and a half, but has also been the subject of much debate and discussion in the country, as it should be, over the last few months. And so I'm very, very pleased that I have an opportunity to speak to you all a little bit about that. And of course, we're very fortunate that we had Shri Anand Sharma ji give us his perspectives. It's a very, very distinctive and a very informed perspective based on his deep knowledge of India's constitutional history, the debates and discussions in Parliament, which he, of course, has been a very distinguished participant in over these many decades. Now, speaking from my vantage point, I will say that I'm not a literary, erudite philosopher from England. I'm not a famous economist from America. I am not an experienced parliamentarian. I am just a simple citizen of this country, a first-time MP who's been in Parliament only for 2 years, and somebody who has spent the bulk of his life making money in America and India. So my perspectives as a result of that are not informed by rich constitutional knowledge, a deep knowledge of Indian history, philosophy, economics. It's a simple-minded citizen's view. So you'll have to excuse me for my simple-minded perspectives. But I think there is something to be said for a simple citizen's view in these matters. And I think by being somewhat parsimonious, by thinking carefully and clearly about some of these issues, we can in fact get beyond the heat and get to some of the light that we need on this issue. Because the noise and the clutter can often confound clear and powerful thinking on this issue. When people talk, as Shri Anand Sharma ji did at length right now, about some of the challenges that we have around India and people feeling like there is one single idea of India that is trying to dominate the discourse, I feel as a citizen, and particularly as somebody who has just come into Parliament and been overawed by the tradition, the history, and the oath that we swear to the Constitution and to the people and the nation of India, that much of what we are worried about, much of what we are concerned about, much of the debate actually is secured by what the Constitution is. And the very wonderful aspect of the Constitution, as Dr. Ambedkar ji said, is that it is not just a constitutional document. It is not just a constitutional document. It is also a social document, but more than that, it is also a philosophical document that embodies a particular idea of India. Embodies a particular, and Shri Anand Sharma ji articulated it very eloquently when he spoke about the Constitution, the history of how the Constitution was promulgated, the various deliberations. You know, of course, you mentioned what happened in Lahore in 1930. All of that is beautifully encapsulated, beautifully articulated, and beautifully included in our Constitution. That is the Constitution of India, friends. And we as elected representatives are sworn to protect that Constitution. We swear a sacred oath to protect that Constitution. And when we swear, at least I do, when I swear a sacred oath, I take it very, very seriously. I don't just take it lightly. And in fact, personally, before I swore the oath, I went through and I read the Constitution end to end. I said, if I'm signing up for something, I better know what it is. Now, obviously, you know, if it's Shri Anand Sharma ji or Shri Arun Jaitley ji, they can quote you chapter and verse and section. I don't have that level of knowledge, but I do have the rudimentary understanding of the Constitution. So if the Constitution is a social document, if the Constitution is a philosophical document, if the Constitution guarantees certain constitutional rights, which we are sworn to protect, then I think much of the concern and the worry that we have goes away, dissipates. Because it is our sacred responsibility to actually protect that philosophy, to protect the rights and privileges that are in the Constitution around a set of fundamental human rights that are enshrined there. Among them, which is included, as we all know, the freedom of expression, the freedom of religion to practice and worship the way we want to, and to eat what we want. Those rights are non-negotiable. Those rights are rights we have protected to defend. And what is even better is that we have a very, very capable and active judicial system, which in fact, and this is almost in some ways unprecedented judicially, has gone beyond just what's in the literal aspect of the Constitution and has defined an expansive philosophy associated with the Constitution called the basic structure concept, which says that even if Parliament with the two-thirds majority passes a constitutional amendment, as we just did with the National Judicial Appointments Commission, the constitutional belt of the Supreme Court says that if it is not within the basic structure of the document of the Constitution and is a violation, it will strike it down. So the rights that we have as citizens of India, the freedoms that we enjoy as citizens of India, are protected by this Constitution that we as lawmakers are sworn to protect. And in addition to that, through another unique mechanism that we have with the public interest litigation, we can go to the Supreme Court, particularly if it's a matter of fundamental rights, and ensure that these rights remain protected. And therefore, in my simple-minded way, I have to ask myself, if these are protected in this very robust, watertight, bulletproof manner, then I'm not sure we need to spend. Now, it's very good from a political point of view. From a political perspective, it's very good to have this debate about what ideology, what your perspectives are, what you prefer, not prefer. But from a constitutional perspective, from a citizen's perspective, it's not clear to me that there is much to worry about. If you can obviously, as Mr. Kanhaiya Kumar did and JNU, take a position in terms of what your ideology and your political philosophy is, he's welcome to doing that. His rights are protected by the Constitution within the freedom of expression as defined through a lot of case law, constitutional law, etc. Good for him. He's welcome to have his opinions. But we can politically disagree with him. We can politically disagree with him. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is in fact the beauty, the hallmark, the philosophy behind our Constitution, which we are sworn to protect. So in my simple-minded way, I'm not sure that there is a great debate to be had about the idea of India because that is so well enshrined in our Constitution in any case. Now, we have also, the Honorable Prime Minister has said very clearly that as far as he is concerned, his only religion is advancing India's interests. His only religion is India. And his only holy book is the Constitution. And again, as I said, the philosophy of India, the idea of India, as Shri Anand Sharma ji clearly articulated, coming through a set of thoughts, ideas, discussions, debates, through our freedom movement, through our great founding fathers, through the extraordinary Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Sahab, is there enshrined in the Constitution. That is, in fact, for our party, our holy book. So in that sense, we are very clear as a party, as a government, how we think about this set of ideas. Those are enshrined in the Constitution. So that's our idea of India, what is in the Constitution. What we have now tried to do is to take it forward in terms of policy making, take it forward in terms of initiatives, take it forward in terms of policies, so that we can also give to the people of India what they demand and what they need and what they want from their government and what they want from the economy and what they want from the Indian state. And that, ladies and gentlemen, we have enshrined in the slogan that we have, the slogan that we used during the 2014 elections, which is Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. So our idea of India, based and founded on the Constitution, to take India forward is Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. Sabka, that means for everyone, peacefully, Sabka Saath, with everyone included. And as we look at it, our view is that there are four major groups that we need to pay particular attention to. And you'll see that our major initiatives are lined up against these four major groups. I will describe those and then I will end my talk. But essentially the four major groups, the Sabka Saath, Sabka, are number one, Garib, the poor, and we are a pro-poor government, absolutely focused on ensuring that we end poverty and destitution in India. It is the farmers who are the backbone of India. Krishi Pradhan Desh hai hamara. So it's the farmers. It is the youth. India is the youngest, among the youngest countries in the world, and with a vast workforce that needs to be skilled, given employment opportunities. And number 4, the middle class. If you include these 4 groups together, you pretty much cover 80-90% of India. And so we have lined up our policies against these 4 major groups. First of all, if you look at what we are doing for the poor, there are some very historic things that we're doing, particularly when it comes to social security. Whether it is Jan Dhan Yojana, Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, what we're doing with health insurance, what we're doing with respect to the pension programs, the national social assistance programs, we are building on all the work done by previous governments. And we are ensuring that we can put together a robust safety net so that nobody in India has to suffer from poverty and destitution, and that they are protected. In addition to that, we are also saying we will provide housing for all. We will bring LPG connections to BPL families so that they don't have to suffer all of the damages and all of the challenges associated with dealing with fuel wood and dealing with dung and other sources of fuel. So these are the kinds of programs that we've put in place for the poor of this country. Garibon ki unnati. That is one of the hallmarks of our Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. The other major set of initiatives that we have is directed towards farmers. And the idea here is Krishi ki Samriddhi. Krishi Kshetra ki Samriddhi. And there, of course, as you know, we have the Pradhan Mantri Sinchai Yojana, the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana that we've just launched, the soil health card, the integration together of agricultural markets, plentiful supply of fertilizers, and a series of programs to diversify people away from traditional agriculture to much more high value, more productive agriculture. Those are the programs that we have got working for our Krishi Kshetra, for hamare kisanon ke liye. Number 3, I will talk about the youth. Now, Make in India, again building on the work that was done by the UPA government, Skill India, Startup India, Stand Up India, all of these programs, ladies and gentlemen, are intended to be able to foster investment, create jobs, drive manufacturing, and enable a young workforce to get skilled, become more employable, and find productive work. One of the major initiatives here is Mudra, which has now been given to 3.4 crore people, and we have disbursed about 1.38 lakh crores worth of loans, very small ticket loans, to people who are doing repair work for mobiles, who are thelawalas, who are rickshawalas, who are running a beauty salon, very small ticket enterprises, so that we can make them job creators, not just job seekers. That's what we are doing for the young workforce of this country. Finally, for the middle class, we have a series of initiatives. One of the most popular ones is Swachh Bharat, to make our cities better, cleaner, greener. We are working on making our cities better through smart cities, through the Amrut program, and we are working to relieve traffic and pollution in our cities as well. So there's a number of programs that we have that are lined up against making a better life, a better quality of life for our middle class. Now, there are a series of other supporting initiatives that cut across these different groups, such as what we're doing to improve public investment in roads, in railways, and in irrigation. These are helping many of our target groups because they cut across them. We obviously have a number of things going on to strengthen our financial system and to improve our tax system as well. And then finally, because we believe in cooperative federalism, we are trying to drive all of these initiatives forwards in such a way that our states are equal partners and our states become part of Team India and really power these initiatives forward. So you can see, ladies and gentlemen, from our efforts that we, of course, within the constitutional framework that we have all sworn to protect, within the constitutional framework, we are defining an idea of India as well. And that idea of India is focused on what our people need at this point. We want to take everyone along with us. Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. There's a whole range of initiatives. We've got now a tremendous amount of momentum behind these initiatives. The macroeconomic stabilization that was necessary for the economy has been achieved. The wind is on our backs, and I'm sure we will certainly have Achhe Din for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I would now request Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal to kindly present mementos to our honored guests. First and foremost, Mr. Anand Sharma. Mr. Jayant Sinha. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal to kindly conclude the event with his summary and present the vote of thanks. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Anand Sharma, Mr. Jayant Sinha, ladies and gentlemen, it's been an eventful 2 days. We had 14 sessions, 57 leaders as panelists and speakers. The subjects have ranged across a pretty wide canvas while focusing on the one big theme. And as we said at the start yesterday, this is not like any other nation on this planet. We're a continental size and as complex, or maybe more complex than any other continent. We're like 29 nations working together, where people speak different languages, wear different clothes, eat different cuisine, even look different. But yet, something holds us together. And that is the very idea of India. It is a spirit. It is our being. It's almost genetic in many of us that this civilization holds something special. An 8,000-year-old civilization which has never attacked another nation in its history, but has absorbed and included anybody and everybody who came in. So the influences in our design, in our textiles, in our food, in our architecture are from the Middle East, are from Europe, are from the Far East, and of course they're Indian. And that is the beauty of this nation. Our biggest challenge is also our biggest strength. Only 20 or 30 years ago, we used to talk of India's population as a problem. There were big programs being run by the government on family planning. In fact, in a debate just before this session, the former Chief Election Commissioner actually mentioned this, that in the year 2010, very quietly, the family planning program just went away. We closed the department. Instead of looking at it as a problem, we are now saying this is India's strength. The demographic dividend that we can realize as these very same young people grow and create India's new future. It is also well acknowledged right now by the world that this nation will certainly be amongst the leading nations or the leading economies in the world. The question we need to ask ourselves is, as a people, what are we doing for ourselves? And as both of you said, what are we doing for ourselves across the different kind of people that are India? Because each one of us is part of the spirit of this nation. So we looked at this from many different perspectives. Our first session said, can the rising tide of reforms lift many boats? Second was beyond frugal, because we've talked of frugal design, frugal engineering, because we've grown up in an environment of shortages over the last 250 years. It has taught us to be careful with how we use resources. Can we use that as a strength? And can we go beyond that now and say, we will build world-class products, but in our own styling? It is, by the way, also accepted that India will not just be the center of the world for small cars. India will produce many new products which will go out to the world and become a model for the world. But more importantly, it is also now being felt India will not just produce new products and services for the world, it will also generate new business models for the world. And I think that is an amalgam of what we grew up with in shortages and what we are now learning in terms of design, technology, engineering, and methodology of producing new products and services. The next session was on nature's fury. And this is to do with multiple aspects of this, partially on sustainability, partially on natural disasters, some of which are being triggered by man-made events and actions. And are we prepared enough? If we do face a disaster, how do we respond? So we had a very interesting discussion, both about what you can do to prevent these, and also, if they do happen, as they tend to, how do we respond to these? The next was an interesting session. It said, governing the ungovernable. You were talking about cities, especially about smart cities. The very idea of smart cities, what it means for us as people, what it means, is it transformational? Will it change people's lives for the better? And how many people will actually get affected by the change that takes place through the smart cities? Of course, it's clearly understood that all smart cities are not all new cities. It is urban agglomerations, it is satellite towns to existing cities, and it is, of course, brand new cities as well. And it is all of the above which will form the smart cities. The next session talked of a very important subject, which is health. But it went beyond just looking at healthcare. It talked of bureaucracy, commerce, and the politics of health. Because we found that like many of our public services, at the top end, we are very, very good. We are completely world-class. But as you come down a step or two, it kind of tends to just fritter away, both our reach and the quality of service that we can provide. And this is as true in education as it is in healthcare. Therefore, we had a separate session on education, but we addressed in this just higher education. There was a Mindmine exchange on the joy of giving and serving. There is a debate now ongoing over the last few years about the need for India and Indians to give. Because people like us, people in this room, and many others like us, are completely blessed and fortunate. Because we have access, we have opportunities to education, to families, to friends, to jobs, to prosperity. But there are many others who do not have this access. What is it that we can do to support the access, the provision of access? And it's not just by donations, it's by creating better system, better process, better training, better skills, and more than anything else, better opportunities. In our own ways, many of us are doing this, but this was an important discussion that what the Bharati Foundation has done in the area of education. The next session was on entrepreneurship and skill development. As we said a little bit earlier, the debate on jobs is ongoing because it is a real need for India. The demographic dividend that we talk about can be a demographic disaster or a demographic nightmare if the many young people do not get productive jobs and employment. And therefore, it is important to focus on entrepreneurship. Jayant, as you just said, we have to create more not just job seekers, but those who can create and generate jobs. Because every time you provide a job, you provide one job. Every time you help promote an entrepreneur, facilitate an entrepreneur, he or she creates 1, 5, 10, or 5,000 jobs. And that's the multiplier we need for the numbers that we have. Because for India, scale is absolutely critical. We can do nothing useful if we do not impact size and scale. because that is the way we are. That is the very nature of our being. The next session was a very interesting conversation with the former Chief Minister of Delhi, Mrs. Sheila Dixit, on making opposite poles meet. One was on governance, and then can different types of governance models come in together and work? And she was very candid and very open in her conversation about her experiences and what she thinks should be done in India and including in city-states like Delhi. At the higher education session, we asked the question, is it possible to create an Ivy League kind of system and a setup in India where you have exclusive elite organizations? Please understand, I'm talking about elite and not elitist. And that's the distinction we are trying to make. We must encourage high quality, merit, and institutions of that nature. The session after that was, in a sense, something that both of you referred to. Are we ready to hear other voices? How do we ensure that this idea of India includes all of India, every kind of India is part of this discussion? Post this, we had a debate, which was a very interesting and a lively debate, where the theme talked of whether the access to reservations should be based on your birthright or on an economic criteria. I'm going to stop here because this can go on. Just to say that this 10th Mindmine Summit was in some ways a special one. One, it marked a decade of a successful series of this, as also the BML Munjal Awards that are given in the middle of this, which we did last evening. And as I said at the start, this is also the first one when our founder and group chairman was not here with us. So almost as a dedication to him, we said we will do a few extra things, few special things, both in the awards and last year because we had started the university on his name. Actually, we started year before last, for which we have our first convocation taking place in almost exactly a week from today. We are starting a number of programs where we propagate the kind of values, the kind of philosophy that he espoused in not just business, but in everyday life. So we are attempting to turn that into a nursery for future leaders, regardless of the walk of life they choose. And we've also said we are not going to equip them with any answers, but we will equip them with the tools to ask the right answers and make up their own mind as to what are the decisions that they make as to the right choices of the answers, because each one of us has our own truth. And in some sense, that is also the theme, is can we accept everybody's truth as the truth for India? An India which is growth-oriented, prosperous, competitive, compassionate, and listening to each other and talking to each other. So I think we are at a unique point in history where we are seeing the setting up of some amazing long-term building blocks. Can we carry all of our people along to get full benefit of what we believe will be a big, massive transformation this nation is likely to see over the next few decades? And as India moves into a bigger leadership position, can we also be a responsible leader for our neighborhood and for the rest of the world? So some of these questions, hopefully, will get addressed in the future Mindmine Summits. But thank you, both of you, for an outstanding address. Each of you touched a different aspect of India, India's parliament, India's constitution, and India's very being. Thank you very much, and thank you all of you for being here with us and being an important part of this assignment. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this year's Mindmine Summit. I'd like to thank our distinguished guest speakers and all of you present here on behalf of the Hero Group for being a part of the Mindmine Summit 2016, a flagship event of Hero Corporate Service Private Limited.